Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Real Football Talk Show. I'm your host Hassan. I have Steve and Adil with me. We'll be discussing Spurs' great win away at Aston Villa. Steve, what was your take on the lineup, and was it justified starting Vinicius up front?
Well, I mean, he scored a goal, so I guess that proves it was justified. I mean, it was a surprise, and there'd been, I think, a few hours before the game, kickoff, there were starting to be rumours about changes to the lineup and a few surprises being thrown in there, and the reasons, obviously, for the surprises were kind of dubious, really, or questionable, because Toby Alderweireld was dropped or wasn't in the squad. Aurier wasn't in the squad. Now, both players you would expect to be in the squad, but actually, from the social media side of things, it was said that they were both ill, so they were unavailable because they were ill. So, probably people will be looking at that and make a mountain out of a molehill where it doesn't probably exist. But he did drop Doherty, and he did drop Winks out of the squad totally, and Bale went back to the bench, and bringing in Tanganga, and Rodon, who hasn't had opportunities, is interesting that he brought Rodon straight back in when I know obviously he's not eligible to play in the Europa League, but when for other games he's just not featured, and he's not even been in the squad. To then come straight from not being in the squad straight into the starting 11 was a bit of a surprise, I think. And you could see from the way that Tottenham started the game that they had a new back four that wasn't used to playing with each other. They were quite tentative, and they didn't know who was going to go and put pressure on Watkins in the air, who was going to come in and cover, and how much to come round and close the spaces between the centre backs and the full backs. So, they started off a little bit of a mess. Eventually, in second half they grew into the game a lot more. You could see they got a little bit more comfortable, and things. I think at half time, Mourinho must have said to them, "Okay, that Rodon will go and challenge in the air for the ball, and Sanchez would come in behind and sweep, because all of a sudden, anything in the air, Rodon was the one that was going for the ball, and Sanchez was the one that was looking to sweep in behind." Vinicius, it was a surprise to see him start, but we know that Kane can drop and link the play, and he did that to good effect. Vinicius is obviously someone that didn't speak a lot of English, and his English is improving. I think the more his English improves, the more opportunities he will get, because he can communicate a lot better with the team, and be a lot more effective. So I noticed in the second half there was a point where Kane had he demonstrated the shape that he wanted the forwards to be in, and how to hold and when, and not to go and press, because they didn't need to press at that point. So it was just about containing their position and not allowing Aston Villa to play through them. So clearly, at this level, Vinicius has got a lot to learn, and that learning is going to happen on the pitch, I guess, and that's the best place for it to happen. As long as he can, we're in a position to see the game isn't at risk, effectively, to allow him to take that.
What was your take on the goal he scored?
Yeah, I think played into Tottenham's hand, really. I mean, I thought the formation was slightly old school Brazil. It looked like a 4-2-2-2, but there was some fluidity with it. Sometimes Moura was going out wide. Sometimes Lo Celso was coming into centre mid and picking it up. Sometimes Kane was dropping into a 10. So you could tell three of the front four were allowed to be have a bit more license. But and I thought it's very much old school Mourinho. This performance was exactly how Mourinho likes it. I mean, they started off the game, I thought, quite direct, and then they were going counter pressing, and as soon as they got the goal, they went containment and counter attack, and it's exactly how Mourinho likes to set up his team and manage a game, and you could say it's a really professional performance, not totally easy on the eye because they're not taking the initiative and they're not playing with risks, but the goal helped settle them down. And I think the biggest thing about the lineup was that it was all players who are going to work hard for the team. They're all players that can. All right, only one you could question is Ndombele, maybe. And I think Ndombele is a bit of a Pogba situation, similar to Pogba's situation at Man United, where if you play him, he's always a risk, but he's such a good player. You might lose something off the ball, but on the ball, you know, he does stuff that no one else can. So it's always that dilemma with Ndombele, much like Pogba is for Man United. So the first goal was obviously Villa's error. Long ball over the top from Reguilon. Konsa was so high up on Vinicius, and the problem was when you go high up on the one of the strikers, you need your partner to play the high line too, and squeeze the pitch. So or at least be sweeping across, so that if it goes over the top, but what happened? Mings was a bit too far apart. So then what happened, it became an actual foot race between Vinicius, Konsa and Mings about who's going to get the ball over the top. So Martinez ended up making the right decision in coming out and trying to clear it. But instead of hoofing it, he done a side foot pass. Instead of just lacing that ball into, you know, right down the bottom of the pitch, he done a side foot pass, and obviously Moura picked it up. And I think on the commentary, I felt Moura didn't get enough credit for that goal. Everyone was going on about Kane's pass, but to win that ball under pressure and then dribble at that speed and then have the, you know, awareness to understand where the space is, play the ball 1-2 with Kane, and then the cutback was just an excellent cutback. I mean, he took out the keeper and 2 defenders with that cutback. I just felt like Moura didn't get the credit he deserved enough for that first one. It was an amazing piece of play for Moura, but the mistakes were from the back line of Aston Villa. Unfortunately, you know, the 2 centre backs are way too far apart, a bit too aggressive. I mean, if they're going 2 up top, you know, you can't be as aggressive, and you can't have your fullbacks pushing up as much as they were. And I think that's where Villa made a mistake, is they didn't adjust to the changes in the lineup that Mourinho had done with the Spurs team. They had a setup as if Spurs were still playing the 4-2-3-1, and they didn't. I mean, they left 2 up, so it kind of cost them.
On Adil's point, Steve, he said about Mourinho kind of picked a lot of players that are hardworking. So, do you think he's kind of trying to also make a statement to the players?
Well, that seems to be the indication, doesn't it? That you know that Lo Celso, for example, has come back in for his first start after injury, and he works hard. He's prepared to put his foot in. Got quality on the ball as well, but he'll do the dirty stuff as well. That the likes of Delhi won't do, for example. Bale won't do. You know, if you looked at the goal, certainly the third goal that Tottenham conceded in the Europa League the other night, where Bale should have just taken the guy out. You know, he's kind of jogging alongside him and allowing Ndombele or Sissoko to take the initiative. Both of which did the same. So Mourinho's basically said, well, I'm going to have players in there that are going to work hard, going to put in a shift and do the dirty stuff, you know. And it was right about Ndombele. He's kind of the one maverick within that squad that isn't necessarily going to do that. Although he did do a lot of tracking back, And I think the only thing I'd say in Mourinho's favour, and I saw an interview that he gave with someone from Sky the other day, and it was just like a 2-minute clip. I think earlier today, and he was asked about the difference in the performance between Crystal Palace and Arsenal, and he said, "Well, you know, they're both the same. I played both the same starting 11, and that starting 11 is fairly attacking because Dembele is being played as like a CDM, but he's not a CDM. He's a more attacking midfielder. So he played him in that role again today, which kind of unbalances Tottenham in terms of the way that you expect a Mourinho side to kind of operate. Certainly early in the season, Tottenham were more successful with a double pivot of Hojbjerg and either Sissoko or Winks, mainly Sissoko. And he's kind of sacrificed Sissoko to bring in an extra attacking player and play and Dembele alongside. Now, what I felt in the second half today was that Dembele was asked to push up a little bit higher and try and engage Aston Villa a little bit higher up the pitch and try and win it a little bit higher up the pitch and not necessarily sit in alongside Hojbjerg. And that allowed, that allowed Tottenham to attempt to win the ball a lot higher, and they were a lot more aggressive higher up the pitch to try and win the ball, and gave them a lot more of the initiative. Certainly, after there was a spate of substitutions around 60 minutes, but certainly after that 65th minute when Kane got the penalty for the second goal, that's because they were putting pressure on the player on the right-hand side of the pitch, won the ball in the Villa half, switched it into space, and then all of a sudden they were in behind the defence again. So it was a definite change in a tactical tweak in how Tottenham approached the game in the second half that gave them the opportunity to win the ball higher up the pitch again.
I think on Aston Villa, what would you take out from that performance? I mean, the struggle seemed to carry on going really for them.
I think up until the first goal, it was quite an even game. I mean, it was a bit surprising because if you watch any of the games previously, there was a lot more tempo in those games. And then I was watching this one, I was like, oh gosh, I hope it's not this tempo. And I was thinking that after 10 minutes, straight away, I was thinking, I hope this ain't the tempo for the whole game, which is quite a slow tempo game. And I think the goal, the goal allowed Spurs to boss the game. And you could clearly see that Villa are lacking that cutting edge because their general build-up play wasn't bad. And they're playing the ball, they're trying to keep it, they're competing off the ball. I mean, I thought Villa done a lot of fouls today, got away with a lot of fouls today. I was surprised how lenient, I think it was Mariner, but the ref was really lenient.
Mike Dean.
It's just constant fouls. It's kind of spoiled the flow of the game, but both teams were doing it, but I just felt Aston Villa were doing it to the Tottenham players a bit more when they're trying to attack. And yeah, it's just one of those games where you see the endeavour, you see there's a structure, there's a system in place, but they really do lack the presence of Grealish to create clear-cut opportunities. Even when they do create chances, it seems like those chances are really rushed. I think it's interesting at the beginning, in the first 10-15 minutes, they tried exposing Sanchez's weaknesses in the air, and they tried popping it in behind Sanchez quite a few times, but they were playing it in for Trezeguet, and a couple of times that nearly created an opportunity, but I think Trezeguet was always slightly offside. But you could see Sanchez wasn't reading the ball over the top. And I think that's what Rodon brings to the team, is that natural, you can tell he's used to playing in a two-man defense. So what he does, he naturally comes across the sweeps more than maybe Alderweireld would for Sanchez. Because what I've noticed is Alderweireld does sweep, but it's only when it's from crosses coming in out wide. but when it's lateral balls over the top, he hasn't got the energy or the pace to kind of sweep for Sanchez. And when Sanchez is struggling with reading the balls over the top, for me, I felt like Rodon was covering him quite well on those balls over the top. So yeah, I mean, for Villa is a struggle. You know, there's endeavour, there's a lot of hard work. They're pressing, they play well, they can't keep the ball, but just that cutting edge is missing. I'm surprised how much McGinn isn't a factor. It seems like he's playing too defensive, because before he got injured, or last season, McGinn had a lot more freedom, and and he's a player who's got that creative side. And it just seems like the 4-3-3 they're playing currently isn't allowing McGinn to play that free role. It was more Samson today, allowed to join in the attack and try and make things happen. So I think that's not helping either. Obviously, Barkley not being in favour is another thing, probably not helping. But he hasn't earned the right, really. The few games he's played, he's been poor since Grealish hasn't been playing, and that also shows how much of an influence Grealish is, because Barkley's performance were quite good, but since Grealish has been injured, Barkley's performance has been poor. He just doesn't look the same player, and it just shows how much Grealish used to get the ball to him in areas where you could see his talents. But right now, the team hasn't got the ability to get the ball into him.
He's just coming back from injury as well, isn't he? Barkley was out for a long injury as well, and I think you're right about, you know, he needs someone to feed him and get him on the ball. But again, he's someone, you know, it's taking him a while just to get back into his stride, I think, having been injured for such a long time and not starting games. So I think he's really just been coming on as a sub, hasn't he? So it's not been able to affect the game as much.
The biggest problem I have with Villa's games recently when I've watched them is how deep they play. And they get a lot of clean sheets, but it's through blocking, and they really do give up a lot of territory and possession of when they're playing. And they're another team that relies on the counter attack too much in their current form, the way they're set up to play. But they just play way too deep. I just feel like they don't squeeze the pitch enough to be a team that really wants to take the initiative in a match. So, yeah, I mean, it's getting them by, but I think for the next step, they definitely need to change how deep their backline operates.
Steve, on this second goal of Spurs, was it a penalty?
Yeah, I think it was. Kane, he's gone to turn. He didn't take the ball with him. Like, you know, there's no doubt about that. He didn't take the ball with him, and the ball was nowhere near him. But he has actually gone to turn, and was it Matty Cash? Is it that fouled him? Yeah, he sweeps him. He sweeps his leg away. So yeah, I thought it was a penalty. You know, I don't think where the ball was going has any factor on the decision. If you look at the similar decision last week in the Arsenal Tottenham game, you know, where Sanchez conceded the penalty, and the ball wasn't going anywhere towards the goal.
It's going away, yeah.
So it's clearly the direction of the travel of the ball is not a factor these days. So it's just whether there's connection, whether there's contact or not, seems to be the deciding factor.
I mean, I don't like this new interpretation. I have to say, I think it's going to open up a can of worms. I personally didn't think it was a penalty because he didn't have the ball, and it seemed more like Kane was making contact with Cash. I mean, they both are equally making contact on each other. Now, the advantage should be always with the player on the ball, but if he doesn't have the ball, it's just a clash. It's just two players. You can't say Matty Cash was making contact more than Harry Kane. They both kind of was making the same amount of contact on each other. So without the ball, I just think it's not a foul. It's not a penalty. It's too soft, because then where does it stop? I mean, there's so many incidents in the box where contact is made and penalties aren't given because the ball ain't there.
If you ignore the ball, right, just ignore the ball for a second. If Kane continues with that movement to try and turn, which is what he was trying to do, he's looking to come back. So it's that movement just to cut back. If he continues with that movement to try and cut back, and Matty Cash isn't there, does he go over? That's the question.
The point is, but then we can reverse the whole question and say, okay, if Matty Cash wasn't there, would Kane even have take the ball in and cross it? No, because the ball went out of play because he never had the ball. Yeah, so even if Matty Cash wasn't there, Kane would not have had anything to create or to shoot because he didn't have the ball with him. So I think that question is, if you reverse it the other way, it's the same thing applies in the sense that there's no goal scoring opportunity there anyway because the ball's gone out of play and he hasn't taken the ball with him.
But if Matty Cash wasn't there, he doesn't need to check back, does he? Because he just goes towards goal. So I don't think I don't think you can use that as an argument to say, well, if Matty Cash wasn't there, he wouldn't.
Well, I only use that in the argument of just the hypothetical argument, because I just think any hypothetical argument doesn't work because it has to be factual. If you have the ball and get fouled, fair enough. But if you don't have the ball and there's, and you're as much making forward movement as the defender sliding in, how much of it is the defender tackling you and how much is it you making contact? It's equal amount. To me, when I watched the replay, I was trying to judge, all right, is Matty Cash making more contact than Harry Kane? And I couldn't judge that. I felt it was actually 50-50. Kane is stepping into Matty Cash just as much as Matty Cash is sliding in. So I just think for the good of the game, this new interpretation is just going to really open up a lot of questions because you have to have the ball. I mean, the whole game is based around the ball. Or else we might as well call it a contactless sport and ref it like that.
Well, it virtually feels like that anyway. A lot of the time, I think the issue in this situation is that in this situation and in other situations, certainly a lot recently, is that the VAR is not overruling the on-field referee because they're saying that they don't feel that the on-field referee has made a clear and obvious error in giving that decision. So they're basically saying that it could go either way. It could have been a penalty, or it may not have been a penalty. But in this instance, you've given a penalty. I can see why you've given a penalty, and therefore I'm happy to agree with the decision that you've made. And that's the issue, that they either think it's not a penalty or they think it is. If the VAR thinks it's not a penalty, then they should say no, I disagree with your decision and it's not a penalty. If they think it is a penalty, then they say yeah, I think it's a penalty, rather than saying, right, well, I don't think you've made a clear and obvious error in awarding that decision.
Because there will never be that consistency, isn't it? So that's what I was going to ask Adil.
Well, it's as long as it's not based on facts, and if it's like Steve alluded to, if it's based on what the referee's opinion of that incident is, then it will always be inconsistent. But if they base it on facts, I think all three incidents facts? Recently all of them, none of them should have been penalties. I don't think. When you say base it on facts, the problem is that your interpretation of that incident differs from my interpretation of that incident, may differ from Hassan's interpretation of that incident. So therefore there are no facts to base it on. So you have to go with a decision that's made. There is one fact though, the ball isn't in play. So if we look at amount of incidents that happen in the box when the ball ain't in play and no decision is made, that's consistency then. Because if we're now saying, okay, the ball does not need to be a factor anymore, then whenever someone tugs or pulls the shirt in the box and the ball's on the other side of the pitch, we should go back and give it as a penalty. Because now we're saying the ball is no longer a factor in the decision making.
But those decisions should be, those decisions were supposed to happen. If you're caught tugging, like pulling a player's shirt off the ball, that's an off the ball incident, and that's supposed to be awarded. But the referees are just not awarding those decisions. It's, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but it's just, as you say, the problem is the lack of consistency in which they actually referee matches.
The only factual element I'm saying is whether the ball is in play or not, because you know you can have players, you know, clashing into each other. It's a contact sport. It's a fast-paced sport. So I don't have an issue with you know, players making contact with each other. It's more the issue around where's the advantage, because the ball's not even there. Nothing's actually been lost in that phase. Like if Kane had the ball, I 100% agree, then it has to be a penalty, because they've lost an advantage of potentially scoring or creating a goal. But when you've lost the ball, it just becomes very grey for me now, and I don't like the new way, the last three games that we've seen, and they've all been interpreted differently. Well, on those occasions, it got interpreted differently. So it's getting a bit strange on how you know, what is the actual rule. And I think the only factual bit about it is whether the ball is in play or not. If it's not, we should officiate it like we do every other incident of the play, which is, unless it's violent conduct, get on with it.
I mean, on Spurs, really, Steve, what was it's been a very difficult week, good result now. What's your take on the whole season, how it's planned out so far in terms of crashing out of Europe, the criticism of the players? What's your view on that?
Big question. I think it's been an inconsistent season. There's been ups, there's been downs, and there have been periods within the season where you look at Spurs and think, okay, there could be something big going on here. Because at one point, Tottenham were, you know, alongside Man City, the only team that were still within, like, you know, four competitions. So in all the competitions that they entered, and then they've gone from that to, you know, they were, you know, top of the league, like all four competitions, and it looked quite promising. I think there were a few changes to the team structure, the team lineup, that seemed to unsettle things. They're clearly, based on what Hugo Lloris came out and said after the European game on Thursday, there's definitely some unrest behind the scenes with players that are not regulars showing their showing that they're unhappy at the fact how much game time they're getting, and rather than sort of just pitching in and, you know, recognizing that it's the squad game and that you all need to play for each other and just, you know, get on with it at least until the end of the season.
And the right to play.
Yeah, you exactly earn the right to play. They'd rather just kick up a fuss or say, well, you know, why am I not in the team? Even if I, you know, when I'm playing, I'm not actually, you know, putting in, not in the effort, but putting in the contribution that's making a difference to the team when I come in. But I still think that I should be on, you know, should deserve a place on the bench or in the starting 11. So that's, you know, that's obviously a big issue. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about Mourinho, as usual, and with him, about him pushing the blame, I think, onto players when things don't look to go so well. But I mean, I was never Mourinho's biggest fan. You know, never been Mourinho's biggest fan. But what I do notice in his interviews is that when Tottenham are winning, when they do well and when they play well, he doesn't say, yeah, like, I've done really good and like I'm really, like, you know, like it was like I masterminded this or anything like that. He says that the players deserve all the credit. The players have done brilliantly. That it's been a great performance by the players. You you know, and no one picks up on that and says, well, actually, when they do well, he is giving the players all the credit. So by the same token, when they don't do well, and when the performances are not there, like they haven't been in, like, you know, against Arsenal, they just didn't turn up again in Europe. They just didn't turn up. So by the same token, I think it's not wrong for him to turn around and say, well, the performances are not acceptable. I don't think the performance was acceptable. We didn't, you know, we didn't do enough to deserve the win, and I'm upset about it. And the players made mistakes and stuff. I don't think that's actually that wrong for him to say that, because at the same time as when they are doing well, he doesn't turn around and say, well, yeah, it was my substitutions and my team tactics and my selection that made the difference today. So, but people prefer to look at the negative rather than to think, okay, overall in balance, how does he manage that? Is he consistent, or does he always just say, right, well, actually that player's rubbish, and as far as I'm concerned, it's all their fault. You know, so
I think. I mean, I slightly disagree. I think Mourinho does subtly put the praise on himself when the team does well. He'll always reference a change that he made, a slight adjustment that had to make at halftime. These are subtle ways, but you're right. He doesn't do it openly, and he does put the praise on the players. But it always feels like he's doing it in a way where he's actually putting the praise on himself. That's what I always feel when I see his interviews. But I think it is wrong for the way he's disassociating himself from the problems of the team. I think that's wrong, because you're picking the players. If they don't fit your mindset, don't pick them like you did today.
Yeah, no,
you're the players you do, but you can't hang them out for dry.
Yeah,
once they lose, because that team was winning. So
you're right, and I think, and it comes back. If you look at the Arsenal performance, for example, you know, if you spoke to any Spurs fan when they saw the lineup, the person that they were worried about would have been Doherty starting in that game, and they would think, right, well, actually that's the weak link. So, but then, and Arsenal had all the joy, and all their joy was down Arsenal's left-hand side of the pitch. Now, rather than actually saying, well, do you know what, Bale is a match winner, he's been in good form and he's been scoring goals and been linking quite well, I will make the change behind him and just take off Doherty and put in Aurier, because Aurier is actually a better defender than Doherty. He said, right, well, actually, I'm going to sacrifice Bale and make out that Bale is the issue. You know, when Doherty was getting beat one-on-one. So
that's why I just feel he's wrong. Is that attitude where he's like, today I had that 2-minute interview and I thought that was wrong for him to go on like, my mentality hasn't changed. Well, the thing is, you're asking players who don't suit your brand of football to play a certain way. When you let them play attacking, they're happy. When you ask them to play a more contained game, you see a dysfunction in the performance.
So I know we haven't got long, so very, very quickly, Adil. So one of the things that he said within that was that he chose attacking players, or, you know, he didn't change the team lineup, and the plan didn't change. Now, that was the key for me, that he said that the plan didn't change. Now, the plan needed to change because you're playing a different team. You can't play the same plan that you play against Crystal Palace as you play against Arsenal. You know, that for me is where he's got a problem.
Thank you both for your insight, really. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.